Welcome back to Only One Thing Podcast, where we explore what it looks like to have Jesus be the center of every part of our lives. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm John. Today we're joined by Congresswoman Ashley Hinson. She serves in the political arena, so naturally some political themes will come up in today's conversation.
But just to be clear, our podcast isn't about politics, it's about people. It's about how believers live out their calling in the real world, wherever God places them.
So as you listen today, our hope is that you'll see Ashley not just as an elected leader, but as a follower of Jesus, navigating all of this, faith, family, and a very public job.
Yeah, we are so grateful to have her join us today. So lean in, open your hearts, get ready, because this is Only One Thing Podcast.
We met each other at KCRG many years ago when you were working in media. What a turn of events. You're no longer working in media. You are in politics, which is amazing. And we are essentially in the same city, in the Cedar Rapids corridor area. And our goal for our podcast, number one, is to just have great conversations with people in our community, people in our circle, people that we know that, one, are not perfect, but that are striving for a better walk with Jesus, that are striving for just more of a solid foundation in their life. And it stemmed from just Jonathan and I becoming good friends and just kind of trying to figure this thing out ourselves. And so we quickly thought of you, and I was like, you know what? People know Ashley, the representative. I'm not sure that people really know you. And so we wanted to just chat about just Ashley, the mom, the wife, the, community member, and see if you're cool with that. Because I think that people are kind of missing out on that.
Yeah, I think sometimes what goes missing in politics is the human element of the people who are serving. And, I've, over the last almost 10 years of doing this, which is wild to me that I've been off of KCRG for 10 years, that I've really met some amazing people across the country who all have that heart for service, right? And that's, I think, the humanizing element is sometimes lost in the Twitterverse, so to speak, and the social media posts and the vitriol that exists within society. So, it's all right. I'm tough and getting tougher, I guess, is what I would say.
I'm sure you are. Yeah. So I guess we'll jump into some questions if you're ready to go. When the title representative is set aside, who are you first? Like as a mom, a wife, a neighbor, like I said, as a follower of Jesus, like how does that identity guide in the way you lead in all of those aspects?
Yeah. Well, I guess what I would say is first and foremost, my family is why I'm doing this in the first place. And so they guide my decision making, and my husband is my best friend, obviously, and probably my favorite constituent. I'd be in trouble if I didn't say that. But, when I get home, I think about the order of things when I walk in the door after being in DC, right? So I always say hi to my husband. Usually my dog is right there first to greet me, but then my boys who are 14 and 12 will come bounding down, and, they're always excited to see me come home. So, I think about my role as mom, and I've still tried to balance that as a major part of my life, even though the chaos that is running for Senate, but also being a House representative, you're on the go all the time. And so you have to purposefully make time for all of the other things in your life, because frankly, it's my time, and I have to control that time as best as I can. And so there are many times when, speaking of being mom, like the mac and cheese pot is like out of the corner of a kitchen scene, right? It's like you don't see the chaos that's pushed right over there. Yeah. But when you get home, it's like you got to balance all of that and still be a mom, still be a wife, and still be a good representative. So
yeah, that's incredible. And I know it's hard. I've had an opportunity to tour with bands and even just myself over the years. And as a musician, I'm also a pastor. And we just got done doing a 3-month tour where I was gone. And I had to go to Nashville to get on the bus, and it was really hard. So I relate with that. I mean, I'm sure you're traveling all over the country on a regular basis. Yeah. How does your family handle you being gone so much? Is that hard? Do their attention there?
Yeah. Well, it is hard. And I think the most important thing is I need to show them that I am trying to be there and present at as many things as possible. So like, the government has been shut down these past couple of weeks.
Right.
I've tried to take advantage of that, to still be able to do my job, but be home for more things if I can.
Right.
So being really intentional about that time with my family is the way you survive that. Thank goodness for FaceTime, right? I think that,
Amen. Yeah.
my boys feel like they can FaceTime or call me anytime. And so for them, that's not much different than being home. They would do that for me at home. It's like, Mom, is there food in the house? And, the new answer is because if I'm away and they're hungry, they ask me to Instacart groceries to the house. So, I can still be mom and go to the grocery store from thousands of miles away.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ashley, you mentioned the government being shut down right now. And obviously there's tension just in our country. There's division, lots of disagreements. Like, how are you leaning on Jesus for wisdom and peace? Can you share a moment how Jesus has carried you through just your job, your family, and the state of our country?
Yeah. Well, I would point first to in my official office in DC, I have my Bible, my founder's Bible, open to the Golden Rule, because I want people who are coming in to my office to understand that's how I'm going to try to do things. That doesn't mean I don't say things that I don't criticize things that I think are wrong. That's my job as a member of Congress, is to speak out about those things. But I think faith as a guiding principle here reminds me leadership is about service, not status. It's about grace and how you execute and making sure you're still providing that respect. And so that is how you balance it through some of these more tumultuous times when things are really divisive and really tense. And I think about, the last couple months and what's happened in our country with Charlie Kirk, for example. And he was a true example of someone who could, willingly engage and in a respectful way. I think a lot of his clips were taken out of context and have circulated as such around the internet. But I think about his approach to those conversations and how I can do better in engaging with people of all sorts of backgrounds. I've done town halls. I've done 47 of them in person. Up until recently, they were pretty respectful. So it's hard to go out and work with people when they don't want to work with you, because you have people who are just coming out with the sole intent to yell and hurt. And so again, I try to remind myself it's about grace and humility, integrity and compassion. And at that point, the best thing back to them is that compassion, right? So that's kind of how I try to navigate through some of these more challenging times right now.
That's good. We just had a conversation that we released just about Charlie Kirk, and not necessarily like making a stand on what we believe is right or wrong with that, but how we both processed it differently. And it's interesting because even though we're very similarly aligned, maybe in our politics and how we raise our family and things like that, we individually process things differently. And Jonathan came from more of a, like, hey, let's pause and let's figure this moment out. And I came more from a, hey, I got to pack my truck up and I've got work to get done. That was a heavy day, but the show must go on, which sounds insensitive, but I'm like, this is the reality that most people are living in their day-to-day lives. And so we feel that tension in our own circles. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for the future of our country. I'm hopeful for relationally just open conversations and where that's going. How do you lean on your faith? How do you lean on your relationship with Jesus? Like, do you have a moment that you can share where things just felt super heavy and you're like, I cannot do this on my own?
Yeah. Oh, there have been many of those moments. So I'm not sure I can point to just one. But, to the point you guys made about you processing what happened to Charlie differently. Like, I would point to that moment in my office where I kind of had a moment of both of those things colliding, because I was taking meetings in my office that day. And we actually had a group of folks from the Sioux City area who were out here in DC visiting. And they had, this was probably 20 minutes after it had happened. And I'm seeing the coverage on the TV. And I'm in there with my staff, and somebody had sent me the video, and I made the mistake of watching it. And so I knew,
same for us. Yeah.
I knew in my heart what had happened. And I was very upset, but I was like, to your point, John, the show has to go on.
Yeah.
I have meetings to take. I have to be professional. I have to do my job because I still serve 800,000 people. And there comes a time, and I had to do this many times as a news anchor too, right? Where there were many of these stories that were absolutely awful, and you have to figure out a way to elevate and separate yourself from the raw emotion in the moment. So I invited this group into my office, and we started the meeting, and Fox was on in the background so everybody could see it. But we started, and I was so struck by the president of Dordt University was in this meeting, Dr. Hoekstra, and he just said, you know what, can we just take a minute and pray? And it was exactly what I needed in that moment. It was exactly what everybody understood the gravity of the moment, and that it was okay to pause for a second. And so I think that was a moment, I would say, where I needed Jesus to get me through that meeting.
Yeah.
He recognized that. I think we all recognize the gravity of the moment. And sometimes it's like, okay, it's okay to pause and take his grace and realize that this is about bigger than us. This is about him.
Yeah, I resonate with that, because for me, I think I was in a place where I was trying to ignore the state of where our country's at right now, the division, the strife. Obviously, around election time, it's really tense, and social media is just can be a very toxic place to be at. And I'm ever the optimist. I'm sitting here going, we're okay, we're fine. And I think when that happened, and again, I saw that video just like you guys did, and then to go on social media and to see so many different opinions. Right. You got some people that are, for lack of better words, dancing and celebrating in the streets, and you're like, okay, what time out? That seems wild. And then you've got people that are like, well, I disagree and I agree, and people are fighting each other. And man, I just started grieving for the state of our country. And so I needed a moment, and I had friends that were reaching out to me, especially as a pastor. It's like, what do we do? Where do we go from here? And so, yeah, those moments where you do pause, you can't stay in the pause. Like you can't, like like you said, you have such a job where you have to stand in front of people and you have to answer questions. And even as a pastor, I have to stand in front of people and answer questions, not on the same scale, but still do. And John, you still had video shoots to do, and you still had work to do. And so life has to go on. But we need those moments where we can get along with Jesus and say, okay, I just need direction. And because we don't know the next move, because we don't want to get this wrong. And so with that, go ahead. I'd love to hear your response.
I was going to say, I want to hit on something you just hit on there, because it's okay to not know, right? And I think we have ended up in this place where no matter what role you're in, people expect you to have just an immediate, processed, canned response ready. And there is no grace given for actual emotion or thoughtfulness anymore. And I think and that's how I don't know how we get past this as a country in general with the social media out there. You talk about the vast differences in opinions there. I don't know how we get past that, because I think it's turned into this, I've got to post right now. I've got to put up what I'm thinking. And I have to immediately share, and in some cases overshare. And from my perspective out here, it's like the press immediately wants a response. Well, maybe I haven't had time to properly think through that.
Right.
But if I give a response now and then I change my mind about how I'm feeling later, then that is a bad thing, right? So I don't know how and admittedly, I don't have all the answers, right? And I think it's okay to say that, but it's like, how do we get past that challenge?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then. So how do you feel in your position that Jesus is calling you to help bring people together that are divided?
Yeah. Well, I think it's by going in places that not traditional Republicans would go, in my case, where, I have visited some of these sites, food banks, healthcare locations that are typically, you'd consider them to be Democrat strongholds for policy.
Yeah.
I'm going in and having those conversations and getting some really good ideas on how we fix these problems. And I always try to put that lens on. And again, it's about being willing to have that conversation. And Jesus was, right? We know that. He was willing to go in and take the heat and take the questions and have a level-headed conversation. So I need to put myself in that perspective in having these conversations. The other thing I'll say is I know that hurting people say hurtful things. And that's one of the lessons I've tried to teach my boys about my approach to politics. And I mean, I still remember it was I think it was 2018. So it's been a while, and the boys were much younger now. They're 14 and 12 now. So this is rewind, obviously, 7 or 8 years ago. But I had a lady come up to me. I voted for the heartbeat bill, right? So I'm pro-life, and I believe in protecting life. And I had voted for that in the state legislature. And I had a lady, and the irony strikes me. She came up to me, and she was so mad, and very clearly a pro-choice person. And she said, I hope you die and go to hell for that vote. And like the vitriol came out, right? And that's what she said. And I just chose to just say, ma'am, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'll pray for you. Literally, that's what I said. And I
Wow.
walked
Yeah.
away because I had my kids with me. And I was like, I don't know how to handle this, right? And Max turns to me and he goes, Mom, what's her deal? So at least even a young boy knew that reaction was not a good one, and we have to do better. And that's when I told him, I was like, yeah, hurting people say hurtful things. So we have to be able to move beyond that.
Yeah. Can I just say, what a great response? Because you're right. Somebody's hurt and they don't know what to say. And that's why they turn to social media. And if they do have an opportunity to talk to somebody of influence like yourself, they're going to say something, and a lot of it is out of emotion. And
Exactly.
And so I applaud you for just being patient in the moment and choosing to pray, because that's the thing. I mean, John said a few weeks ago on that episode that we did, it was like, if we're not careful, we're going to end up destroying the people that we're trying to reach.
Right.
And we're trying to love.
And help.
And
Yes.
help. And that has to happen with sometimes listening. Okay, tell me your side of the story, share your heart. We can agree to disagree, but let's put our weapons down and let's talk as humans and respect each other's dignity. So I love that about your heart. And so thank you for just being the person that you are. I think that was beautiful.
Yeah. Well, we can disagree without being disagreeable. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you just have to, brush your shoulders off a little bit. And I take a lot of arrows, and I wear a pretty strong case of armor, but there are days when even I get home and I'm like, oh, boy, it's been a day, So the nice thing is, and again, my family, so you talk about like nothing like reality to bring you back to center, right? As a mom, and you walk in and then it's like, okay, well, you think you've had a day, and then you hear, oh, well, someone came after my kid at school. My kids, it must be tough being a congresswoman's kid, at school. But, my younger one, if a kid was mean to him at school, I still need to talk him through that. And so we all have to take time as people to internalize the daily challenges we have. But at the end of the day, it's like what we were talking about earlier. Sometimes you just got to move on and internalize it and deal with it later. So I think there's a lot of that happening right now. But I think as far as our country goes, how we move forward, I think, I look at where we are right now, especially when faith intersects with government. We have the most pro-faith president that we've had in a long time. He has set up an office to protect people of faith so that people can feel free to live out their faith in this country. We didn't see that under President Biden, so I'm excited about what President Trump's done in that respect to elevate the faith conversation and faith leaders in this country. And so I think that we need to not be afraid to lean on that. And especially as we move forward and we have to make tough decisions. And I really do think in the next 6 to 10 years, we're going to have some really tough love that our country needs. We got a lot of problems that need fixing, and some of those solutions are not easy solutions.
Yeah. Off topic real quick. Just thinking back to our time when we worked together at the news station, and what was that turning point for you, and how did you kind of navigate that with your family that you were like, you know what, I'm going to set this aside? I mean, was there something that happened that really just said, you know what, if something's going to change, I want to be the one to be part of that?
Yeah, I think it was like a culmination of things, because I worked at KCRG from 2005 to 2015, and we covered some pretty amazing stories in our community during that time. And I think back to a couple of points that really stick out in my mind as like I could go into public policy instead of being just a journalist. And one was the flood of 2008, because I saw what the impact, the devastation was to our community. But I also saw in my mind how good government worked as a response to that, because people came together, again, a lot of different backgrounds, and realized, hey, we need to actually come up with some solution. We need a flood mitigation board. We need to actually figure out how we're going to respond to this
Right.
scope of a natural disaster going forward. So I saw like the good come out of that, and I really liked how they problem solved. Then I also saw, and I was more frustrated by this, but I was getting out of bed at 2 a.m, not making a ton of money in the late 2000s. And I saw what I considered to be very disrespectful to taxpayer dollars. The Democrats had a trifecta in Iowa, and they overspent and had to cut 10% across the board. And I remember being so mad about that, because they cut education, number one. And I cared a lot about making sure people had access to a good education in the state. And so to haphazardly come in and cut funding, I saw that and I was like, oh, I could do that better. Like, it's all about good management. And so then when the opportunity presented itself in 2015, when Craig Paulson, who was the state rep for the district I ran for, he was also the Speaker of the House at the time in Iowa. So I had some pretty big shoes to fill with Craig. But I turned to my husband and I said, hey, I think I'd like to stop talking about it and start doing it, right? And start doing something about it. And so for me, it was about the problem solving. And that was a pretty interesting conversation, because you can imagine, I mean, a lot of professions in the state legislature, you can stay, right? So if you're a pastor, you can continue to, serve your congregation. If you're a veterinarian, you can continue to take care of patients. If you're a farmer, you can continue to farm. Not if you're a journalist, you got to quit your job. So I had to make the decision to leave my job that I actually really liked a lot too. So that was a really good introspective look about what my priorities were in my life and what service looked like for me and my family, and took a pretty big leap. Speaking of a leap of faith, that he would continue to provide for us as a family, but I had to leave my good paying job and say, honey, I think I'm going to leave this job, not get paid for a while, for a job that maybe pays $25,000 a year. And so
Right.
my husband's answer was, oh, maybe I just need to sell some more insurance. So that's how Matt responded back. And so he's been super supportive of me ever since then.
Love that.
Always supportive of me, but yeah.
Yeah.
So we know you have very little time. I know you're running
Yeah.
from thing to thing. Do you want to wrap with just this last question, and then we can let you go?
Yeah. Thank you again, Ashley, just for taking the time to meet with us and share your heart. We wanted people to not just see the United States representative, but the mom, the wife, the neighbor who just loves her country, loves her community. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of leads into this next question. So definitely, as a pastor, how can the church and pastors and everyday believers come alongside you and love our community and just really help advance the kingdom of Jesus?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, it's realizing those conversations do need to happen. I think too many times people feel like we're unapproachable. No, we want that engagement. So know, if you're watching this, like, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories. We want to understand how what we're doing affects you, right? And I think that we want to make sure that dialogue continues. If the dialogue breaks down and people feel like they can't speak up, that's where we're lost as a country, right? So I think it starts by making sure the faith community knows, hey, on these issues you care about, and it doesn't have to be faith related. It can be issues that affect your families, right? Yeah. Like the tax policy, all of that intersects, right? And so I think that we need to make sure that dialogue is ongoing. And so as leaders in your churches, in your congregations, making sure that people know they can reach out to us. One of the things that we do, and I take very seriously and a lot of pride in, is solving people's problems. Constituent services is a huge part of what we do. Yeah. And you think about the stresses that people have in their life. I hate to think that government is causing some of those stresses, but in some cases it is. And in some cases, there is a government solution for that stress, right? So we have programs for veterans. We have programs for those with disabilities, Social Security, Medicare for our seniors, Medicaid for the needy. So that's where the intersection happens. And we want to make sure people feel like they can reach out to us so we can help solve their problems. So I would say that that's just, the open dialogue is so important. Yeah,
that's awesome. Just knowing that, listen, our government representatives, our leaders are approachable. They're people just like us. They have the same desires and cares. And it's just a great reminder that it's not an us versus them thing, that we're all just Americans and we're all trying to have a better place for our families, for our kids.
Right.
And so that's what we decided to do this podcast because we believe, we know that not everybody believes this, and we understand that. What we believe that the answer to all of our issues is Jesus. And if we can put him in the center of our government, the center of our homes, the center of our families, the center of our schools, I understand there's a separation between church and state. I get all that, but Jesus is the answer. And so thank you for being willing to be bold and talk about your faith and your love for Jesus. We're so thankful for that, Ashley. Thank you.
We all need a little more Jesus in our lives.
Amen.
And
We do.
I know that you're a musician, Jonathan, and I, with my church Antioch, for a number of years before I was gone in DC a lot, I was playing in our worship band and our praise band, and so I think about the power of music and that bringing people together.
Yeah.
I think this is about the power of bringing people together because our divisions really fade when we have the open and honest conversations. So
that's awesome.
No, thank you for your leadership, gentlemen, and thanks for having me on today.
Thank you, Ashley. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
Ashley, thank you for joining us today and sharing how you're pursuing Jesus in such a demanding role.
Yes, we are truly grateful, Ashley, for you taking the time to share your heart and your honesty. And we also want to say thank you to our listeners. Thanks for listening today, for joining us. And we just want to give a reminder that Only One Thing podcast is not pushing a political agenda. We want to have real conversations with real people and just bring Jesus into the middle of everything. Listen, we know that politics are very big in our world right now, and we want to bring Jesus in the middle of everything and just share his heart.
Yeah. And if something encouraged you today, or even if something pushed back a little bit and you're like, I definitely don't agree with that, let's continue the conversation. Give us some comments below. Share this with your friends. It really just helps us. It helps more people discover Jesus-centered stories and opens that dialogue.
Yeah, that's so good. Tension is how we grow.
Yep.
And so, yes, push back, comment, share your thoughts. We want to have a conversation. We want to hear your heart. We want to bring Jesus into the middle of that. We also want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, Don Bushnell Ministries. You can check them out at donbushnellministries.org. Beautiful ministry that helps churches, pastors. If you feel led to give them a donation, do that. It's a blessing. They'll bless your life. They bless so many lives. Be sure to check them out.
And Lord, just help us keep you as our only one thing in every season of life. We trust your timing. We trust your answer.
Man, amen. And remember that in a world full of distractions, let's make Jesus the one thing.